All right, everybody, welcome back. We are jumping into a fascinating topic today. And, it's always really driven by what you all send in.
Yeah,
And, a lot of folks have been sending in articles about nasal vaccines,
that's right.
particularly for respiratory viruses, COVID-19,
Definitely.
flu, all that good stuff. And I got to say, like, I was reading through these, and
It's a pretty exciting stuff.
it is exciting stuff. And I think what I was struck by was, like, there's just so much potential there.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking no needles.
Yeah.
We're talking, maybe even stronger immunity,
Yeah.
right, where it's needed.
Right.
And then this whole thing about, like, broader protection against variants.
Yeah, definitely a lot of really fascinating potential with this new technology.
So let's break it all down. Like, how do these things actually work?
Well, unlike the traditional injection you get in your arm, these nasal vaccines
Right.
are administered as a spray into the nasal passages.
Okay.
And that targets the mucous membranes that line our respiratory tract.
So it's like right at the point of entry for a lot of these viruses.
Exactly. Yeah. So things like the common cold, the flu, COVID-19, they all kind of enter our body through the respiratory tract.
Excellent.
So it's really, strategically important place for our immune defense.
I mean, it's kind of brilliant, right? Like, instead of
Right.
waiting for it to get into the bloodstream and all that,
Exactly.
you're just like, nope, right here.
Yep, you're meeting it head on.
Yeah.
And that's where mucosal immunity really comes in.
Okay.
These mucous membranes in our nose and respiratory tract, they're really our first line of defense.
Makes sense.
And they have all these special immune cells that can actually recognize and neutralize those invading pathogens.
Okay.
And the cool thing about nasal vaccines is that they stimulate these cells directly.
Wow.
So you're creating this targeted immune response right where it's needed most.
That's kind of like having a security checkpoint at the entrance to a building instead of just having security guards like roaming the halls.
Absolutely, a perfect analogy. And this, targeted approach could really have some significant advantages.
Yeah, like what?
Well, for instance, some studies have suggested that nasal vaccines might actually be more effective at preventing transmission
Oh, wow.
of respiratory viruses
Interesting.
compared to traditional vaccines.
Yeah, because, I mean, one of the articles that somebody sent in was talking about, and like how this could be like a huge game changer
Oh, absolutely.
for public health in general if you could reduce the spread.
Absolutely. It would be huge.
Yeah.
And what's really exciting too is this potential for broader protection against emerging variants.
Okay.
And the NIAI,
What's that stand for?
that's the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases.
Okay, got it.
They're currently conducting a phase 1 clinical trial to evaluate this possibility.
Okay, so a phase 1 trial being...
It's the initial stage of testing in humans,
Okay.
primarily focused on safety and dosage. So they're looking at, can a nasal vaccine actually provide immunity against a wider range of COVID-19 variants?
So fascinating.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff.
And, it seems like there's a ton of momentum in this field.
Absolutely.
Like, did you see that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services just allocated like $500 million to this research?
I did. That's a big investment.
That's huge.
And it really shows, the government's seeing some real promise in this technology.
Yeah.
And, it's not just funding. We're also seeing a lot of encouraging findings from some recent studies.
I mean, like what?
Well, there was a study that you shared with me that was published back in August in Medical Express.
Yeah.
And it found that a particular intranasal vaccine
Okay.
remained stable for 7 months
Oh, wow.
when it was stored at 4 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
Which, that kind of stability could be really crucial for distribution,
Yeah.
especially in places with limited resources.
Makes a lot of sense.
But, it's important to remember that research is still ongoing.
Sure.
And while the initial findings are promising,
Of course.
we need more data from larger clinical trials
Right.
to really confirm long-term efficacy and safety.
Okay, so I think like the big takeaway here is we have this potential for a really groundbreaking technology.
Yeah.
It could be needle-free, which a lot of people are excited about.
Absolutely.
It seems like it could potentially, really target the immunity right where it's needed.
Exactly.
And then maybe even offer some broader protection against these, constantly evolving viruses.
Right.
But like you said, we need to keep doing the research
We do.
to really understand the long-term implications.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's say for a moment that like everything really pans out
Okay.
and these nasal vaccines like really live up to their potential.
Yeah.
How do you think that would change our approach to like public health?
That's a good question.
And vaccination strategies, like could this be the thing that finally gets us ahead of, these respiratory viruses instead of constantly reacting?
It's a really interesting thought.
Yeah, and it's something I hope everybody kind of listening will like think about and,
Yeah,
ponder a little bit because I think this could be a really big deal.
it could.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of nasal vaccines.
It was fun.
Always is.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you next time.
See you, bye.
Bye.